Planes. The marvellous machines that fly in our skies, with 100,000 aircraft scheduled to fly every day. On the outside, it may look merely like a metal fuselage powered by a few engines, able to carry up to 500 passengers, but it is anything but that. A plane is a machine containing some of the most advanced computers and technology made by man. Each part of the body is specially designed for its purpose. For example, the flaps, lights, windows, and so many more. I am Jacob Goldwater, and I am presenting a question to you today. I have been doing research, gathered evidence from many different sources, in order to find the clearest answer to this. Would it be a good idea to develop and build a new, bigger, and faster passenger plane? To help answer this question, I am going on a very special trip. Europe's busiest airport, London Heathrow.
About 1,300 planes take off or land from Heathrow runways every single day, with one taking off every 45 seconds. But planes didn't always look like this. The Boeing 747, the queen of the skies, didn't always wear that crown. Concorde. It was a commercial jet like no other we have today. I'm sure everyone has heard of Concorde. It was the supersonic passenger jet that beat countless records and carried passengers from England to New York in just over 3 hours. If it was this fast, why did it lose business in the modern aviation world and eventually have to be decommissioned? This is a crucial question, as if we want to consider building a new passenger jet, we would have to be careful not to make the same mistakes again.
Concorde burnt approximately 26 tons of kerosene fuel per hour, which is much more than the consumption of any other plane today. It is 3 times the rate of fuel consumed by jumbo jets. The performance of Concorde during flight was not elegant due to its speed and the engines. It was noisy and turbulent. It could only carry 100 passengers but had no space to carry any freight. The quest to exceed the speed of sound, Mach 1, was environmentally costly, as the excessive consumption of fuel polluted the air and takeoff was extremely loud due to the supersonic jet engines, which may have disturbed animals and residents nearby. Flying on Concorde was, of course, extremely expensive. It cost about £4,350 in 2003 for a one-way ticket to America. For all these reasons, the supersonic passenger jet, which had only been in service for 27 years, lost its place in the aviation industry and flew for the last time on the 24th of October 2003.
With one queen deposed, another was crowned the undisputed monarch of the skies, the 747. The Boeing 747 is the largest passenger jet made by Boeing. For many years, it was the largest jet in the skies until the production of the Airbus A380. Boeing 747s are still in common use today, as they are reliable, capable of long-haul flights, and they can carry up to 660 passengers, although British Airways have recently announced their intention to phase out the 747 from its fleet by 2024 in favour of smaller, more environmentally friendly aeroplanes.
The 747 was produced after a request by the American airline Pan America to build a new, bigger passenger plane that could easily be converted to a cargo plane once the supersonic passenger travel era took over. When a plane flies faster, it consumes more fuel, making it less efficient. An airliner loses its finesse, the elegance during flight, as it approaches the speed of sound, which was one of the major problems with Concorde. It also uses an enormous amount of energy to reach Mach 1, the speed of sound, which would result in a very expensive flight, as more fuel would be required and more powerful engines would be needed to carry a plane past the speed of sound. Engine producers have not yet created an engine suitable for smooth supersonic flight. So, the maximum speed that a new aircraft could be expected to reach would be about Mach 0.8, which is 80% of the speed of sound, which is not significantly faster than any other plane we have in the sky today. The maximum speed of the A380, the fastest passenger jet in current use, is 1,020 km per hour, which is just over 82% of the speed of sound. Aeroplanes fly faster at a higher altitude due to the temperature and density of the air. Engines work most efficiently in colder air. The air is less dense at a higher altitude, meaning a plane would fly faster as there would be little air resistance. Because of the low density, the wingspan would have to be greater as there is less air to support the plane whilst gliding. Also, the engine fans would have to be of a much larger diameter as more air needs to be dragged in.
The current maximum altitude for the A380, the largest passenger aircraft, is approximately 43,000 feet. Short-haul aircraft would not be able to climb to this altitude as there would not be enough time and it would be a waste of fuel. For this reason, it would only be practical to design an aeroplane capable of flying at such a high altitude for long-haul routes.
The wing load is calculated by the total weight of an aircraft divided by the area of its wings. As mentioned before, the wing size of a proposed larger aircraft carrying more passengers and cargo would have to be greater if it is needed to climb to a high altitude. This would require an enormous wing load.
There is a limit placed, however, to how big wings on an aircraft can be. Currently, airports limit the wingspan to be about 80 metres for passenger jets, and the runways would need widening if the size passed this limit. This would be very expensive, and it would also limit where the plane would be able to take off and land. Building an even larger passenger jet will require further widening of runways across the globe.
An even larger passenger plane would have a larger mass. In order to take off, the plane must reach a critical speed so enough lift force is produced by the profile of the wing. A plane of any size with a proportionate wing loading would be able to take off. To take off, planes need to have wings allowing lift to take place from the air passing over it. The wings would need flaps to shorten the takeoff distance and generate more lift. This allows air to pass over the wing and air to pass through slots in the flap to generate more lift, and it extends the wing, causing drag. This would decrease the takeoff and landing distance. Lift force, however, is generated by speed. In order to gain enough speed for a larger aircraft to take off, even with the use of the latest flap technology, the runway would have to be long enough. Runways would have to be extended for larger planes to take off. This would require the acquisition of land surrounding the existing airport, making it expensive, potentially impractical, and possibly very unpopular. Who would want to make a new aircraft? The first commercial Boeing 747 flight was in January 1970, the same year Airbus was founded as a European consortium. Boeing held the monopoly for large passenger aircraft until the launch of the Airbus A380 in May 2004. This was bigger and faster than any other passenger plane produced in the past.
In theory, Boeing could take on the project of building a new plane to re-establish their domination of large jet aviation. Airbus, however, also have a strong developing fleet, and they have recently announced their intention to halt production of the A380 in response to the cancelled orders by Emirates Airlines. We can assume that only Boeing and Airbus would be in a commercial position to develop a new, bigger passenger plane. Neither of these two companies has declared an interest in pursuing such a project, as they are updating their specification of their current fleets. For example, Airbus are designing new aircraft to join the fleet of A320s. They are little, fast and basic, and designed for short business flights.
Who would buy a new aircraft of a bigger size, and why would they want it? We can assume that budget airlines and smaller companies would not be interested in purchasing such a large aircraft. They simply wouldn't be able to afford the maintenance, and also, budget airlines normally only operate one type of aircraft, so all the crew are trained to fly every plane. But adding a new plane to their fleet would raise training costs, and more crew would be required. British Airways would be more likely to show interest in purchasing a larger passenger jet.
It's not just BA who would benefit from an investment like this. Emirates, one of the world's most luxurious airlines and also the largest owner of A380s in their fleet, may benefit as well. Emirates, as well as British Airways and many others, are major international airlines that own large fleets, usually designed for luxury.
Only such companies could consider buying and maintaining a new, larger aircraft. Reducing their orders for A380s and 747s could allow them the opportunity to buy a bigger jet. But why would they want to? On the British Airways schedule, there are approximately 15 flights per day departing from London to New York. The majority of these flights are large jets, capable of carrying up to 400 passengers. Some of these flights are smaller planes, designed for simple business flights. If a new, bigger plane was developed, which has a few hundred more seats than the big planes we use today, BA would be able to cut down the number of smaller flights. BA would be able to save money from fuel, maintenance, staff and landing fees. However, there may be opposition from customers as departure times would become more limited and flights would depart from fewer airports, meaning customers would have to travel further to reach their departure airports. To conclude this research project, I feel that it would be possible to create a new, bigger and faster passenger plane, but it would need larger wings to generate more lift and high-technology flaps, which are very expensive to produce. The plane would need longer runways, allowing it to take off and land. This would be very expensive, as all the runways at international airports would have to be extended, and it would limit which airports the plane could use. The plane would have to fly slower than Mach 1, the speed of sound, to maintain its finesse. This speed is not significantly faster than planes we have today. The plane would need to fly at a high altitude for the most efficient flight, making it a long-haul aircraft. To fly at a higher altitude, it would need bigger wings, as the wing loading, the total weight of the aircraft divided by the area of the wings, would need to be higher. The engines would need to be very large in order to use the required air at a higher altitude where the air is less dense. These engines would be heavy, cumbersome, and very expensive to produce.
If a new aircraft was built, it would probably be developed by Airbus or Boeing, as they are the only established companies which could take on such a project. Airbus, however, announced recently that the production of A380s would stop by 2021, confirming that there is clearly not an appetite for building a larger plane. If these planes were built, we can assume these new aircraft would only be purchased by major international airlines for long-haul routes at the expense of orders of existing planes. These airlines could benefit from a new, bigger plane, as they would be able to cut down the frequency of flights. saving money from fuel, maintenance, staff and landing fees, but potentially at the cost of customer satisfaction. For all these reasons, I have concluded that it would not be a good idea to develop and build a new, bigger passenger plane at this time. However, with the ever-increasing travelling population and the racing advance in technological development, there may be scope for such a project in the future.